Yeah, one of my
It's like way over Tahoe or Yokohama. You know, you can write a way back and it doesn't have an adjustable pedal. Tahoe has adjustable pedal. So if you had plenty of you look at it, it's like, a rental car. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second to the last Sunday in August. Happy. That means September is rapidly approaching. We have one more Sunday in August, and we will be in September. So happy about that. Now, as we've been going through the book of Ecclesiastes, we have one more Sunday in it, and next Sunday is the wrap up. It's going to bring the whole message together. But this week, it's the prelude to the finish. And so now with that prelude to the finish, it's going to make some observations that we will readily be able to agree with and see. And it's also going to give some advice. And really, in Ecclesiastes, it's great that we see all of these truths, although a lot of the truths are, excitingly good so those kind of truths, but they're truths nonetheless. And so with those truths, now we're going to get some good advice in our prelude till next week when we cover the end. And so, like I said, it's not that many chapters in the book. I really hope everyone's been reading the book, and definitely next week you want to hear part of the conclusion to the book of Ecclesiastes. So this week we're in chapter 9 and we're in verse 1. So like I said, this is the prelude to the end. So with that, it starts, "Indeed, I took all this to heart and explained it all." So now, that's why I said we're going to get somewhat of a summary here as we move forward. Now, here's how he's explaining it all. The righteous, the wise, and their works are in God's hands. So that is good. That is really good to know. The righteous, the wise, and their works are in God's hands. People don't know whether to expect love or hate. So here we have a surety. We are in God's hands. And then we have an observation of the unsure. We don't know whether to expect love or hate. And so everything lies ahead. Everything lies ahead of them. Now, this is especially true for a young person. A young person, the future is full of opportunities, and as you're living it, it's yet to unfold. Everything is the same for everyone. So as we've been reading this, what is that everything that we're going to, the same for everyone? Well, we're going to see. I'm not going to spoil it, but everyone shares this same same event. There is one fate. Now we're going to see these contrasts. One fate for the righteous and the wicked, for the good and the bad, for the clean and the unclean, for those who for the one who sacrifices and the one who does not sacrifice. So the one who sacrifices at this time would have been an Israeli. The one who doesn't sacrifice would be somebody else. As it is for the good, so also for the sinner. As it is for the one who takes an oath. Remember, we talked about, an oath has to be fulfilled, because nowhere does it command you to take an oath. But if you make an oath to God, then you are to fulfill it. So it says, so also for the one who takes an oath, so also for the one who fears an oath. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun. So what are we talking about? Death. Death comes to the righteous and the wise. It comes to the evil. It comes to those who are good. It comes to those who are bad. Death is going to come and visit us all, regardless of what you're doing. Now, the consequence is different, and that's what we're going to also see. But the one thing that will occur to all of us is death. And so there is one fate for everyone. In addition, the hearts of people are full of evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live. After that, they go to the dead. And so now this dead that we're talking about, this is talking from Solomon. It is not in an era of the New Testament. It is not in an era where heaven, the afterlife, all of this has been better explained later. So here, the focus is on the physical death and not a spiritual death. The physical death is going to visit us all. The spiritual death will not. So this focus is on Solomon, on remember, it's been about what is the point of life, right? And so now we have him clearly saying death is going to visit everyone, no matter who you are. But now verse 4, right? But, okay, so we know death is going to visit everyone, but there is hope for whoever is joined with all the living, since a live dog is better than a dead lion. Right? Now, I want to talk about this dog for a moment and the lion. In the ancient Near East, a dog was not a pet. You did not have dogs for pets. A dog was an unclean scavenger. They ate dead things. They were just like now, if you have a dump, they're rocking around the dump. They were just another animal, but they weren't like the loyal favorite pet. So we see that dogs are associated with contempt. And so Goliath expressed this connotation when he asked David, "Am I a dog that you come against me with sticks?" So that dog is an expression, it's contempt. They're not the family pet. They're not viewed like that. Now that's in 1 Samuel 17:43, that example. The lion, on the other hand, was admired as the king of the animal world. Lions were icons of royalty. For example, Jacob used the metaphor of a lion to describe the coming Messiah in Genesis 49:9, right? So that we have the Lion of Judah, right? That's the King of Judah, and there's the lion is that symbolic metaphor for the power, the king. The lion was the top of the animal kingdom. People knew that. The lion, if you found one on your own, could be the top of your fight too. It was a very strong animal. So Solomon concluded that a despised, contemptible dog that is alive is better off than a dead lion, even if the lion is the mightiest and most majestic animal in the entire animal kingdom, right? What good is a dead lion? It doesn't do anything. It's dead, right? So this is a stark way for Solomon to remind us that to be alive is to have opportunity that is not available to the dead. The dog, even though it's a contemptible animal, it still can do things. The lion, majestic animal, it's dead, it does nothing. And this point was previously explored in Ecclesiastes 6, 1-6 chapters ago, when he asserted that there is an advantage in being alive rather than dead. One of the advantages is that you know you will die. So if you know from the start you will die, should you be choosing priorities accordingly? Should you live life accordingly? We like that comparison with the righteous are dying just like the evil. That is true, but it doesn't mean that living unrighteously is equal with living righteously. It just means both have an opportunity to see that there is a limited time on earth. During that limited time, you choose how you live and what you do. And we'll see after you're dead, you have ended that portion of existence. You no longer can affect it. You can't change it. However you lived is all the time you have to live it. So thus, you can live your life with the knowledge before you, the knowledge that once you are dead, it is too late to direct the path of your life. Our days are fleeting, and that's what we're going to see, that fleeting coming up a couple of times. Therefore, we must assess how to live well in order to die well. Right? And so one of the things that I had on my wall at work, a year and a half ago when I had a wall at work, was the regrets that nurses and healthcare people heard from those that were at the end of life, either in a nursing home and a hospital. And so, sounds kind of, a little morbid, but it's not. It was really good because when I looked at it, it reminded me every choice I make today is the only time I have to make that choice. If I make it 3 weeks from now, then at that point, it may be the last time I have to make that choice. But right now, when I make it, it may be the best time to make that choice. And so when you live, every day that you live, you make choices. Do you make them from an eternal perspective, or do you make them from I have plenty of time left. I can do something bad now because in the future, I might feel bad and I'll correct it. Or I might. No, we only have now. The living choose what they do in life. The dead have no choices. Only the choices in life that have already occurred. So when you're dead, your life is over. All that you did, all that you didn't do, all that you helped, you didn't help, all of these things, you made a decision for Christ, you didn't. All of those things, the choices ended. Now the consequence. Death only brings consequence. So if you are saved, the choices you have made to become saved and live as a Christian, once you die, you cannot make any more choices. You still, even the saved count. So with that, the choice you made to be saved, we said death has only consequence. You will have the consequence of that choice. And fortunately, the consequence is everlasting life. You have been forgiven. You will go into the kingdom of heaven. For those who did not choose during life, there are no choices for them either. They only have the choices that they made before death. After death, for both the living, and that's what we're getting with everyone dies. The good, the righteous, the sinner, this person who sacrificed, the person who didn't. Life is about living life, and life is about setting priorities in life, and life is about deciding early in your life, what am I doing? What choices will I make? And with that, because in death, just like it said, you only have a consequence. There are no more choices. If you chose never to be saved, that's when you'll face the consequence, not while you're living. If you chose to be saved, you'll face the consequence of that choice. It just happens the consequence of that choice is wonderful. The consequence of the other choice is not. So in verse 6, for the living know that they will die, but the dead don't know anything. And so now as you're alive, you know life is finite. Are you living your life based on knowing your time to choose things will end? And, when we talk about that one fate, when Solomon spoke of the one fate for the righteous and the wicked in verse 3, he was primarily concerned with physical death, not heaven or hell. Because the time to choose in that context of everyone meets the same fate is not one of heaven or hell, because we all meet it. We will have two distinct fates. But his point is, in life, those who live for God and those who don't will both have the same fate. We will all have the first death. So there is no longer a reward for them because the memory of them is forgotten. Their love, their hate, their envy have already disappeared. Now I'm going to stop there for a second. So when we talk about their love, their hate, their envy have already disappeared, those are emotions, right? We all have emotions. Something happens and we can get mad, happy, joyful, sorrowful, bitter. We all these emotions, right, have happened. But now when we talk about the dead, these emotions live in the living. And so and they affect your choices. The dead, their feelings no longer affect the living. Someone who is dead cannot be, you cannot experience their anger. You can't experience their happiness for you, their joy. You can't. Those people, their time is over. And so when their time is over, their love, their hate, their envy have already disappeared. And there is no longer a portion for them in all that is done under the sun. So that portion is, what do I do? Like in work, I talked about work. We all have work, whatever that work is. We all have family, we have lives, we have all of these things. So the dead, they don't share in life, love, work, the seasons, the celebrations with the living. They don't share in any of that. And that's that. When you're living, we need to look and live life knowing it is going to end. And so do we make choices with people based on that, on how we treat them, how we maintain a relationship? Do we make the most important decision that determines eternity? Do I follow Christ? Do I give myself over to Christ and ask forgiveness, or do I not? All of these things, because once you die, you have no portion with the living. The living keep on living. And we see that in our everyday life. We all know people who have died. And so with that, those people are no longer with us. Yet we continue with celebrations, with the seasons, with life, with everything. So now we have some advice in verse 7 and 8. Go, Eat your bread with pleasure and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already accepted your works. Let your clothes be white all the time and never let oil be lacking on your head. So, the oil lacking on our head is definitely a ancient Middle Eastern custom as far as, the same way when we talk about in the Old and New Testament, somebody would come in and it was customary that they would have their feet washed, or there would be a bowl there so that they could wash their feet if you don't have a servant, because those were customs on becoming clean, on healthy living and such. So here it says, in many ways, verse 7 is at the heart of the message of Ecclesiastes. Go eat your bread with pleasure and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already accepted your works. Have you ever wondered why the gospel writers included this saying, Jesus, and then here's the quote, came eating and drinking? Breaking bread together was a sign of enjoying others in an intimate fellowship. That's like if we have a party, we have a group of people over, we have a potluck, we do all these different things, then that is how we get together and enjoy company. In ancient Israel, wine was a common item of fellowship, and that's where we see Jesus turn the water to wine during that wedding, because that was a time of celebration, and it was a group that got together for fellowship. In some cultures, it may be tea time or grabbing coffee with a friend. God has not only created in us a need for food and drink, we all have to eat, we all must drink, but he also created a vast variety of food and drink for our enjoyment. That's why, in the military we had MREs, and sometimes that is what we had to eat. So was that the equivalent of having like a potluck or a Thanksgiving dinner? No, but it did provide food for us, and so with that, we were still eating. But that variety, but it wasn't the same eating as when we have a potluck here and everybody comes with a nice side dish and we enjoy all the variety, right? So in verse 8, Solomon continued to build on the idea of enjoying life with the words, your clothes be white at all times and never let oil be lacking on your head. In ancient times, when people were distraught, they wore sackcloth and ashes to demonstrate the grief, right? So you see that on the prophets. Sometimes you see it on kings. You see it on. So that was a visual representation of grief. And so wearing sackcloth and ash, that was a visual representation. Whereas on the other hand, white clothes reflected the heat of the sun, and oil protected and nourished the skin. So those were symbolic of joyful things. So if you were going to a wedding, then would you choose to wear something, attire that is joyful for the moment? Or would you show up wearing sackcloth covered in ash? Because if you show up, because how you show up is it visually, we notice people on what, how is their attire? And in this contrast, if somebody is in sackcloth and ash on their head and ash on their body, especially in the Old Testament time, you would know without asking they're mourning. There is something terrible going on, right? So that's why Solomon is saying that. So now in verses 9 and 10, I'm going to put this to begin with. When you enter into marriage and you see people who have been married for many decades, you wonder about what is it like, or what will it be like so far in the future as a couple. Those who have been married for decades see newlyweds and remember their marriage like yesterday, and they are amazed at how fast the time went by. And so verse 9, with that in mind, on how fast does life go by? Yes. And so the older you are, and you've been married for decades, and you think back on, I remember when we just got married. I remember like we had our whole life in front of us, and how did this go? How did we make it so quickly to where we are? And we see young people getting married, and we can remember back, and young people see older people, and they think, wow, can you even imagine being married for 40 years? Wow. And now all of a sudden, you're like, wow, how did 40 years go by? So now we're in verse 9. Enjoy life with your wife you love all the days of your fleeting life. Now that we saw that word fleeting, right? So that fleeting life means that it's going to be gone quicker than you ever imagined. It is fleeting. It is here and then it's gone. And so if you knew how long you were going to live and how much time you had with your wife or your spouse, we'll say, would small things disappear? Would many, what you consider a big thing? Oh, I can't believe this problem. If you knew you only had 2 more weeks, would you even care? Would it even be an issue? Would it be, when you look back on your marriage, there are many things that all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I don't even know. I don't remember why we were mad. I just remember we were mad. And now I wish I hadn't been, because obviously whatever it wasn't that important. And in the time of life, it's not that important. And that's where we see in the Bible, if you have enough, be happy with that. Because whatever financial decisions you make, there's only a few people in the world that will really say, I would be extremely wealthy if it wasn't for this one decision. The rest of us will never be faced with that. I can't look back and say, if only I hadn't bought, that pack of gum, I would have had enough money. I would be a millionaire today. But, be careful on the regrets that you have, because, when you choose to make regrets, it's a choice. It's a choice that led you to that regret. Can you let it go when it happens? Have this view. Enjoy life with your wife you love all the days of your fleeting life, which have been given to you under the sun. We see it again, all your fleeting days. Now, for this is your portion in life and in your struggle under the sun. So, what is your portion? You won't know until it's over. How much life will you get? You don't know until life is ending. And so, although we all, we all look into the future thinking, I wonder what I'll do in my 70s. I don't know that I have my 70s. But that goes all the way back to very young people in high school even. You look and you think, by the time I'm 35, I'll be old, but I will be doing this, right? And so, but really, you don't know your portion. What, yeah, 30, yeah, 35. I was at work eating lunch with it's a great demographic spread of young and old people. And the person there was talking to us that she had all these things she wanted to do before she was 40 and wouldn't be able to probably do it. And so, unfortunately, all of us at the table weren't in our 40s, right? And we're like, really? And then we got to see the facial color. And then she realized, oh, I'm talking with a bunch of old people. So, but I bring that up because at any age you're at, short of at the very end, you always think about what you will do next year. What will I do this fall? What will I do at Christmas? Well, like we think, what will we do at Christmas with the grandkids? I'm going to take a few days off. What will we do remember, your days are fleeting. Are you living now with the priorities that will set forever? Are you living with priorities with God, knowing that you don't know when you'll no longer be able to make those priorities? Because those priorities are chosen. You must choose them. Do you choose to live for God? Do you choose to follow Christ? Do you choose to come to church? Do you choose to be active? Do you choose? Because one day those choices will end. And they end for everyone. Whatever you, and now here's in 30, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your strength. Because, the because tells us why. There is no work, planning, knowledge, or wisdom in Sheol. Sheol is the term for death, where you are going. And so, are you doing your best now? Whatever you do you do your best? Because the New Testament tells us when we work, we should work as though we're working for God, right? When we work for our employer, that is the type of person we are. We know that we do everything for God's glory. So your work, your planning, your knowledge, all of those things, you will not be able to do them when you meet death. So the choice, and this is a great, like I said, it was a prelude, because next week we're going to see some priorities based on this knowledge. That's why I said, Ecclesiastes is the adult book of wisdom. It is the adult book because it's asking you to look at your life and reflect. What are my priorities? I first know you will die. Second, do your priorities reflect that knowledge? That you only have a limited amount of time under the sun. Your days, you do not know when they end. So each day, do you live it with those priorities? Do you live it knowing that I have a good relationship with God and I value that relationship? And by valuing that relationship, how do I do that? I do what God has asked. And fortunately, God has told me what he wants in the Bible. So I don't have to wonder. I know what God's priority is for me. So, and then it goes back to your family life. Do you live and enjoy life with your wife, your family, your spouse, based on knowing that time is fleeting? And the word is fleeting. And we saw it twice. It's fleeting. It will be here and it will be gone. And so, we see people who have been married 50 and 60 years. And the entire 50 and 60 years of their marriage, they were always looking forward, thinking that they would have more years together. At some point, that will visit us all. Did you value your spouse? Do your children, your extended family? Did you value God? Did you work on enjoying your wife by valuing that relationship, your spouse? Do you work on valuing relationship with God? The same way you would ask your spouse, and you would be expected to be observant, right? What does your spouse like? What makes your spouse happy? Do you do those things, right? Do you do, because you watch your kids, you know what gets them excited, you plan something special. If you're able to do that with your earthly family, do you have a priority with God that says, let me see what God really likes. Let me see what God wants. Let me do what God wants. Where is that in my life? Where is it that says, I want to do what God wants, not because God said, do this. That's what a hired servant does. We pay them to do something, right? They earn their wages. But within a family that we're adopted into, we don't earn love. Love is showered upon us. We love our children, not because they took out the trash. They took out the trash because that's an opportunity to show that they value what we wanted. The same way, when Christ died and we have salvation, Salvation was paid for. We're not working it off. We're not earning it. We don't do that as a Christian. Salvation was paid in full. So why do we then do what God asks? Because it is about a relationship. Do I really now that I am free from a second death, I'm completely freed from the fear of the afterlife. I know I have no judgment to be concerned about. If I am now free from those concerns, can I not just focus on how do I build a relationship with God? What does Christ ask me to do? What does he want? And now I don't do those things. They're not works because I'm not a paid employee. I am a family member adopted into God's household. I do it because I value the relationship and because God has asked me to do it. Not because I've already been paid, meaning my debt has been paid. The debt for sin has been paid. So I don't have to worry about that. I'm not working it off at all. I am working for God. I am doing what God asks strictly because I value our relationship. I want to do what God says because that is my priority. And that's when we see this make a priority, live, we live for the future, but also realize that future is fleeting. It may not be the future, the length that you thought. So next week, we are going to finish up Ecclesiastes, and then we will move into the fall book with the onset of September. So, wow, how's that went by quickly. And David, if I could ask you to close us.
Lord, we thank you, Peter, this morning. Reading, thank the word, and we need everything. Now, don't know when each one of our days will be ending. And live right now. We don't need to make big plans for the future to celebrate something. We need to celebrate each one when we have the opportunity. Pray that you with the Christians in Afghanistan that are under persecution and are scared, but in a way they're not. They already counted the cost. They knew this day may come. And we just pray that you will protect them and that we could learn from their witness that they were willing to still claim your name as their Lord and Savior, even in the eyes of someone that was willing to kill them for that. Just pray that you be with us, go into the service this morning. We have Brother Josh, he brings the message. All these things to ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Oh, that doesn't look right.